I'd probably say the most defining moment of my life, was probably when I did catch that last IED during my second deployment, um, which actually resulted in me not being able to do our last mission because they said, hey, we have a few guys that have been hit enough to where we can't afford to let them get hit again. So they ended up helicoptering me out, which was horrible to go through. But um, yeah, man, no, we were rolling down the street and I was really upset about some stuff going on back home. And so I was really on edge. And, we, I'll skip ahead a little bit, but the bottom line is, we're rolling down the street and I hear Foster, that guy who'd been hit by a lot of IEDs. He developed like a sixth sense, right? So he just would know. He just would have a feeling. Like you would hear him say something like, "Man, I got a bad feeling today," like something, something, something. So he comes over the radio and he's like, "Hey," he's like, "Tonto, my sergeant." He's like, "Hey, Tonto, I'm gonna just stop for a second. I got a bad feeling." And Tonto's like, "Yeah, Roger that. Take a minute." And he's like, "Silverback, you good?" That was my call sign, was Silverback, of course. In the Marine Corps, there's no racism. Everybody's getting hooked up. You know what I'm saying? Like everybody's getting hit. So, no matter what color creed you are, you're gonna get some, and we all love each other. And it's just we're above that, man. So, he's like, "Silverback, you good with me taking a quick break?" I'm like, "Roger that. Do what you got to do." So he gets ready to stop and do kind of a security, get out and kind of do some security and look at the ground and whatnot. And as he rolls to a stop, I'm just in a black room. Like, I think if I think really hard about it, I might be able to like remember feeling the energy go through my body. My boy Hebert was sitting where you're sitting, right across from me, facing me. All my guys are facing outboard. I'm the squad leader. I put myself in the safest place. I'm at the very back, sitting on top of a water cooler, a Gatorade water cooler, and I'm facing Hebert. And he says the last thing that he saw was me folded in half on the top of the 7-ton with my legs out, and me just like looking at him like in shock, like, and other than that, I didn't even know I'd been blown up. 60 some odd pounds of homemade explosives was buried underneath the road and detonated directly underneath me. And I'm in this black room and everything's okay. Like I'm super chill. Like I'm super just like.
And you remember that?
That's the next place my consciousness picked up was me being like, just like hanging out. And I remember kind of being like, relieved. And I was like, why? Like, what was I doing? Like, why am I at peace so much right now? And next thing you know, man, I asked, like, I remember I could see my thoughts. I remember being able to call up my thoughts. And I remember kind of being like, what was my last thought? And it was, why is the water cooler why is the water cooler trying to come up my butt was really what I was thinking.
Come on my butt?
Yeah, literally. And it's because I was sitting on a water cooler when that charge detonated underneath me. And so I felt all that pressure. And I was like, and I guess that was my last thought. And then I started to kind of realize like, oh my gosh, like I think I'm dead. And I had this realization, like I'm a pile of guts on the floor in Iraq. And I was like, what was I doing? And it started to come back to me. What was I doing? I was on a patrol in Iraq. Where was I sitting? I was sitting on a water cooler. Oh, and I started to have this recall, like, oh, and then I started to be like, I was on patrol and I'm dead. And right when that started to happen, I started to see my family. And I started to go to my family. Like I saw my mom washing dishes and I saw my sister and I was apologizing to everyone. And I was like, Mom, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry I died. I died in Iraq. And like they couldn't hear me, but I was like there with them, and I saw like my girlfriend at the time and and I was like, I'm so sorry. And I was like trying to tell everyone I was sorry and goodbye basically. And I finally got to my grandma, and my grandma used to always tell me, she used to always say like, Byron, if there's ever anything stronger than you, you just say Jesus, Jesus, Jesus. And it's really cheesy. Like I wish it was cooler. You know what I mean? Like I wish it was like tougher. Say Jesus, by the third time it'll go away. And I just remember I started praying, man. I started being like, Jesus, Jesus, you got to get me out of here. Like, save me. Like, I'm powerless. Like, I'm done. I'm so sorry. And I remember being so sorry that I lived my whole life 18, 19 years old. I remember being like, I can't believe that it's over. Like, I can't believe that, like, I realized in a second how big of a miracle opening your eyes was and getting to do this. I realized in a second how much of a just unfathomable miracle consciousness, reality, the 60 some trillion cells that are working simultaneously, synergistically right now to give us this opportunity to do this. And I started to like, and I just felt so heartbroken that I had squandered it. And I remember just praying, and I remember the prayer I said to God. I said, Father, I may never be everything you've called me to be. I was like, but if you give me a chance to go back, I promise I will go so hard in the paint. And I said it just like that. I was like, I'll go so hard in the paint. I may never be everything you call me to be, but I will give my best to live the best. I'll go as hard as I can at making the most of another opportunity. And I all of a sudden I was in my body. And I remember at some point I was able to look at my buddy, and he was looking at my body, and I wasn't able to look at my body, but I was looking at him, and he was like in shock. Like, and I just kept praying, man. And next thing you know, I was in my body. My boys hear me, you know, saying Jesus, Jesus, Jesus. They still make fun of me to this day. They're like, I heard you in the corner over there, you know. And I end up back in my body, and I remember my dad got shot at point blank range with a shotgun, and he was declared dead multiple times. And I remember, you know, asking him as a kid, saying like, Dad, you know, like, how did you not die? Like, is there something you can give me? And he's like, son, you die when you give up. He's like, I never gave up. They declare me dead and I would fight back. I had to live. I had to live for your mom. I had to live for this. I had to live for you. And I remember. And I get back in my body, and I can't move my body. And I'm just like, I'm able to open my eyes. And I remember being like, Father, I can't do this if I can't have my body, like, take me. Like, I can't have it be like this, man. And sure enough, man, I hear my dad, like, you know, and I remember when I got to my dad, when I was apologizing to him, I was so heartbroken because I remember him saying, son, don't die. And I remember being like, pray for me, you know. And I was like, Dad, I'm so sorry I failed, you know. And then I hear him saying, like, son, when you die, you quit when you die. And I started fighting, man. I started fighting, and I prayed. I asked for my body. I asked to have power over everything again, and I got that power back. And it almost felt like one of those Abrams charging. Like I felt like I felt like I powered up, dude. And I opened my eyes, and I got up, and I had this righteous anger that came over me, and I decided I'm not going to die here. And the vehicle's starting to kind of burn and catch on fire, and we're waiting for secondaries and waiting to get ambushed. And I got up out of that hole. You became
conscious in that room?
I became conscious back in the vehicle. So I was like in the undercarriage kind of the vehicle, and I crawled out of that. And then the door was jammed shut from the blast, like jarred shut, like the ladder was jarred shut. And we're all in there, and the smoke's starting to fill the vehicle. And this righteous anger came over me, and I kicked out the back of the 7-ton ladder, like kicked it back down. And I remember running up to the edge of the 7-ton, and I looked down, and it's like a 7-foot drop out of the back of one of those things. I weigh 300 pounds with all my kit on. I had 100 pounds a kit on. I looked down, and I black out. And my buddies, I black out, and I wake up in a field on a knee, setting security for myself. And my boys are still in the vehicle, still kind of like getting themselves together. They said, apparently I woke up, and I just like Superman jumped like 15 feet out the back of that vehicle and darted off into the reeds. And I'm setting security for myself on a knee, and I look back, and my boys are still in the vehicle. And I'm like, get out of the vehicle. And I get everyone out, and we storm the nearest building, and you know, we find 6 guys in there, and we cleared that entire street. These were the only 6 guys on this street. And when you're over there, when you're fighting the bad guys, they're dressed a certain way when they're civilians, and they're dressed a certain way when they're mouge, as we would say, you know. So these guys had their tennis shoes on, their jogging outfits on, their Adidas running track suits on. So like we knew these were the guys, you know. So, you know, we pull them all out, and there's about 6 of them. We line them up, and you know, we're all still jacked up. I haven't had time to really assess my guys to see what's going on,
or yourself,
or myself, really. You know, and I ended up with like a class. I think it's a class 5 concussion because I went out for so long, and a fractured elbow. But overall, dude, 60 some pounds I took by the grace of God and came back. And sure enough, dude, we're like, who speaks English? And these dudes roll up. We're like, who speaks English? And one guy looks at me dead, and it was their alpha, looks me dead in my eyes, and he's like, I don't speak English. And he says it like, I mean, he says it so Englishy, you know what I'm saying? And I'm like, so this is the guy, right? So now you got to imagine when you get blown up, man, you're furious. Like, and so the rage starts to take over my dudes, and you get those anger tears are streaming. I'm looking at my boys.
Bro.
I don't know if someone's got internal hemorrhaging and is about to just fall off, fall over, and we're going to lose. I'm like,
it's like they did it.
Yeah, and these are the guys. And I ran into this gnarly choice point that I don't really usually talk about. But now I'm sitting here, and my boys look at me, and they're like, hey, man, like, you know, we all know we have AKs in the back of the trunk. You know what I'm saying? You know, we all know we could just leave some AKs and like make the world a better place. You know what I'm saying? And it's kind of that when you're in a team like that, you become one organism. Like no one has to say anything. Everyone just knows what to do. And we put them on their knees, and I remember kind of being like, if I do this, if we just smoke these fools, I just remember being like, I'm gonna be fine. But the rest of my guys, you know, I started to think about, like, I could see, like, I've always been able to see, like, paths, not the future, but paths, like possible outcomes. And I remember just being like, I could see, like, that dude sitting in a freaking lazy boy, like, shooting himself 10 years later, and no one knows why. Like, this is going to be cold-blooded. And by the grace of God, I was able to get a hold of myself and my emotions and my ego and everything and say, hey, you know what? Good job, guys. You know, we're just going to detain you. and we did the right thing.
And was it your call?
It was my call.
Was your call?
I was a squad leader, so it was my decision. And
but you also knew, as much as you knew, you could sense, you could see that some of these guys don't have the whatever it is.
Right.
This is gonna come back to haunt one of these guys, and you ain't.
If I make this decision as a leader, I'm gonna put these guys in a position that I think is gonna eat them alive.
But you also knew just as plainly that you could watch these dudes die, and it wasn't going to affect you.
Yeah, I was going to be fine.
Yeah,
I don't know, for whatever reason, probably that perfect amount of trauma in childhood, I have a different emotional reality, very much so. But yeah, man. So fortunately, I'm proud of the fact that I made that decision, but it's one of the hardest decisions I've ever had to make.
I can imagine. Did you get resistance?
Yeah, I did. Yeah, some of the older dogs on the team that had been through Fallujah were like, bro. And I was like, I know, man, but look at these other guys, man, you know, and I know I made the right choice. But that moment was the defining moment in my life when I came back out of those ashes that I called my Phoenix moment, man. And from then on, I've endeavored to live life as hard as I can. Because that was a clear second choice. Wow.